Sapphire LensFlare is known for creating some of the industry's most beautiful looking flares. Beyond the presets, there's such a wealth of controls in this filter that I know it can feel a little bit intimidating to go deeper, but it's really not. I'm Ben Brownlee for Boris Effects. Join me as I take you through my top 9 simple tricks to get the most out of Sapphire LensFlares. Number 1, always start with a preset. Whatever you're looking for, this is the fastest way to find it. We've got an evergreen library, which is a treasure trove of different looks and calibrated lens flares that are built off of real lenses. We can filter these down by the style of lens, for example, anamorphic, or by the software release year. And I can even search for flares created by my favorite authors. Oh, look, there I am. Number 2, embrace the Flare Designer. Now I'm going to click on Edit Lens to go into Flare Designer. Now this is the place where you would go if you wanted to create new lenses, but it's also the perfect place for you to preview them. Now with the preview window turned on, I can select any of my presets in the same way that I could in the preset browser. Not only can I preview how they're going to look, I can also move them across the screen. Number 3, don't settle for the preset. While we're in the Flare Designer, let's make this our own. Now I can use the group categories to turn off some elements that I might not want to use. And if I come into the components area in the presets, I can actually add in some more complex looking elements to the flare, like chrome hoops, or maybe a nice little lens dirt element. Excellent. Number 4, final tip for the Flare Designer is how you change the overall color of the flare. Now you can go into the individual elements and do it there, but if you just want an overall tint added, I'm going to go to the group color and just change that shade. Now, if I don't want the whole element to turn that tint, I'm going to make the saturation set around about 50%. See, that keeps the whites white. And if I push it up higher, that's going to color it a little bit too much. Let's take that down again. Now, this may not always work if the creator has used multicolor gradients, but it is the fastest way to check though. Number 5, get subtle. Now, some of these flares are rolled heavy because it's much easier to pull something back than to add on. And we don't have to do this across the whole flare. In the host controls, there are individual sections that let you adjust hotspot, raise, and other elements. Now, hotspot will affect every element whose position is set to 1 in the Flare Designer. Doesn't matter whether the element is actually in the hotspot group or not, it just goes off of the position. Now, raise affects any raise elements. That could be raise, shimmer raise, fan raise, or spiky raise, even chroma rings. And other is everything else, of course. Now, in this way, I can make big changes to the overall look of the flare without going back and forth to the Flare Designer. Number 6, triggers. Now, strap in for this one. It's important, but it's probably the densest concept that I'm going to talk about, and it will trip you up. So your trigger settings change how the flare reacts to moving towards the edges or the center of the frame. And there are 2 parts to this. Now, the most obvious bit is here in the host controls. So there are separate controls for edge and center triggers. Let me just turn on show edge zones and center zone to see where the animation starts. And then we have brightness and width to change how it affects the flare. But this is only half the story. Now, some of the elements seem to be affected more than others. And that's because these values that we just set in the host are actually multipliers for the element animation that was set when these flares were actually created. So come join me back in the Flare Designer, and I'm going to start with this single element. Now, under animation, these response parameters default to 1, so brightness response and size response. If I increase them, I get an oversized response. And if I set them to 0, nothing happens when I move over the trigger zones. So this is why some of the presets respond differently to the triggers. Now, if you want to calm certain elements, this is how you do it. You sort of bring that level down a bit. And it also works on groups too. So if I select this group, we can bring that down and that will affect the whole group. Number 7, occlusion. Now, the most common use for occlusion controls is to change when and where your flare sort of turns up. So here, I'm going to set the occlusion layer at the top of my lens flare effect, and then I'm going to make changes down below. I can flash the flare on and off as it reacts to the alpha or luma of the layer. Now, if I occlude with luma, you'll notice that it colors the flare as well. But I can turn that off just by deselecting use color. So that's already useful. But here's a trick that I like to use with lens flare applied directly to a text layer. Now I'm going to turn up diffraction glow. All right, so you can see that the text gets a bit of brightness when the flare moves closer. However, this is the real fun bit. So I'm going to turn the glow width down to a low number, really low number, and you get this really nice looking rim light. And with a bit of tweaking on the bottom 4 parameters, and we end up with something that looks like this. Number 8, get it moving, even if it's static. So if you're in a locked off shot or just want to use the flare as a static background element, there's easy ways to give it some more life. We have atmosphere that creates a feeling of smoke or haze. So turn the frequency down and turn the speed down. And I'm just going to play with that until I get the right feel. Another easy way to do it is with flicker. So flicker amplitude controls how big those flickering swings are. And if you want slow rolling changes, you turn the flicker speed down for a more chaotic mood. Let's just crank it up, have a little look. And then finally, we have flicker randomness that's going to control if it flickers at all. At 0, it will always flicker. There's no randomness. At 1, it will never flicker. I tend to keep this very low, or actually probably close to 0. Number 9, that tracks. Yeah, there are a number of different ways to automatically track a flare to another point. Wherever you're working, you can always use the built-in Mocha to track the hotspot and pivot point. Just remember, after you finish tracking, turn on hotspot uses Mocha or pivot uses Mocha. If you're in After Effects, you can connect your flare to any or all of the 3D lights in the scene. So we just change the modes to 3D, select which lights we want to use. And there we go. And if we're driving other effects with the same 3D light, this is going to be a real time saver. Finally, if you have some hotspots in your scene and you don't want to track at all, you can use the sister effect S LensFlare Auto Track. So this will automatically add 1 or more flares to your scene. So the presets are the same. The controls are mostly the same. But really the most important new controls are hotspot threshold, which controls where the auto flare is likely to get placed, and the max hotspots, which limits the number of flares that it's going to place. So don't make this number higher than the number of bright lights in your scene, or you're just going to be chasing badly placed filters and it's just going to be flaring all over the place. So if you want finer control, here's another little tip. Make a copy of your clip. I'm just going to duplicate that, color correct it so that only the lights that you want are shining. And then you can use that as the track layer in the original layer, in the original lens flare effect, to limit where things get placed. There we go. Of course, the best way to get total control is with Mocha, just requires a bit of actual tracking. There's plenty more to cover with S-LensFlare, but those are some of the tricks that I use the most. I've also created a lot of lens flares over the past few years, so if you want to take a closer look into some actual lens flare creation techniques, just let me know in the comments below. See what else is available in Sapphire, and also check out the whole flare library at boriseffects.com.